Now when the good old holidays roll around, I'm the kind of a guy that likes to be found just taking it easy and laying around, doing nothing. But I take my chair and I sit on the lawn, and just when all my cares are gone, about 1 million bugs start carrying on, and I'm cussing.
As the Olympic torch crossed Canada, so did the forestry capital of Canada. In January 2010, representatives from Norfolk County, Ontario, officially handed over the Forest Capital of Canada designation to the Cariboo Region District in British Columbia. This special designation, awarded by the Canadian Forestry Association, is part of a long-standing tradition of recognizing a Canadian community that demonstrates stewardship and sound practices towards sustainable forest development, management, and conservation. This title truly represents the dedication, perseverance, and faithful stewardship that are required by the forest industry, its forestry professionals, and their families. One of these dedicated stewards is Paul Galeazzo. After the devastating blow the region took due to the pine beetle, Paul changed gears and redesigned his plan for the future on his woodlot.
I started out in Ladner, actually, back when it was the house was surrounded by potato fields all the way around, a lot different than it is now. But the years that I remember growing up is from about 1967 on, when my parents moved up to the Bridge River Valley, which was about 100 kilometers west of Lillooet in the mountains. There was a little mining community. We moved up there and we had 50 acres and a fish camp and a big beaver swamp, and had a heck of a good time. And just enjoyed the heck out of it living up there. And those are the years that kind of got me into the bush thing, right? And then after that we went to it was a gold mine community. It was much like Wells, which is to the east of Quesnel here. It's a similar kind of a town, and it closed down in 1971, and we sort of had to move out to Lillooet to go to school and stuff. So I pretty much spent the rest of my youth in Lillooet and got into the forest industry, logging in the summers and stuff, and then decided I didn't like to get out of bed quite as early as them loggers, so I went to university and became a forester.
I think Paul is probably one of the best woodlot operators out there. He's extremely good at notifying us about any time he plans to do any cuts, or if he's doing any activity on his woodlot. He's always very careful to contact us, let us know well in advance. And I find that we work really well together. He's a great guy, and he does a good job, I think.
Like, I've got trails back there, and if he knows that he doesn't block my trails or drop wood on top of them, he makes sure that they're clear, that I can still get through. And if he has, my dad has gone back actually once when you guys were at the very back. We have there's an old, I think it's an old logging wagon trail that's been there for decades, and they were busy, I guess, dropping trees and stuff, and my dad went down and told him that, I rode through there, and he made sure that it was all cleaned up so that I can easily get through with the horse that I really appreciate.
Well, I studied landscape architecture, but living in Quesnel, there's not a lot of opportunity. I do some work for the city and for private residences, but I work now for a forestry consulting company, and I do the mapping for them. I also do volunteer work for the city, Communities in Bloom, and I used to write for Gardens West magazine as a feature articles about gardens throughout central British Columbia.
My younger brother, back in the mid-'80s, when he got out of forestry school, came home with this cool idea about getting a woodlot, and can't remember what number they have. It's 362 or something down in Lillooet, and they used my father and mother's land and got the woodlot, and things just weren't quite right for me to join in that partnership. But I always look back on that and said, hey, geez, now there's a heck of a plan, that is. So I spent a lot of years, like he did that in the early 80s, mid 80s, and I spent a lot of years thinking, geez, that's not a bad idea. And in between, I'd gone back east and went to school for a while out there and met Stephanie, and then we came back out here, and we came to Quesnel in 1991. Still in the back of my mind, you know, I'd like to get a woodlot, thinking of that. And I was working for the Forest Service at that time, and you weren't allowed to have a woodlot as a Forest Service employee at that time, so the chance came up. So I packed it in with the Forest Service and went consulting and started applying for woodlots, and I think 13 applications later we were finally successful and got one, and that was in 1998 that we got the woodlot. So,
well, my planting crew years ago did a lot of work on the planting of Paul's woodlot, and I think one of the things I liked about planting for Paul out there was the fact that when he went to reforest that area that was totally wiped out by pine beetle, a lot of the big companies in this area, they'll go back and plant 100% pine back in there because they know it'll take and it'll get back to free to grow, and it'll be, you know, fairly easy to manage. Whereas Paul took a chance to try and change over and introduce a little more fir and spruce than what he took out of his woodlot. So I think that showed a bit of foresight on his part to plant that 40% that he did in other species to try and get a mixed plantation back in there. And he was taking a little bit of a risk at the time. I think that just shows that little extra level of management or of effort on his part to try and save that sort of thing from happening in the future.
Oh, it was good on the information, what the discussions we had today. He's obviously realizes this is my new hand I've been dealt, and he's looking at ways to how do I make the most of what I have left through trying to deal with, you know, how do I make use of those little trees and manage those stands so I get the most from them over the next, whatever it is, 50, 60, 70 years until those beetle-attacked stands are available to harvest again.
normally in this kind of an area, probably the simplest thing would have been to just plant it back to pine. And you'd get trees like these here growing fast. But given the history we had with the pine getting wiped out by the pine beetle, my thinking was we should try and plant a mix of trees. So this fir was again planted at the same time, and you can tell when you look down at the bottom of it how brushy it is and multiple tops. They had a heck of a time getting going, and they look real scary. You think you've lost them, but then they take off, and now it's established and it's going to grow pretty good. But it's, you know, there's a pine same age, so it's a little riskier, I guess, for meeting your silviculture obligations.
He seems to be managing his woodlot as well as he possibly can, given the cutbacks or the amount of allowable cut that he can take care of every year. I think he's quite conscious about making sure that woodlot's here in the future, and he does a good job at it.
Well, when we're going through and cutting the aspen tree down, you come along with your sandpick and give her a little bit of a bend and a bit of a hack and snap it, and you're trying not to cut it all the way off. You want it to stay connected to the roots. And this one's a good one because you can see we did this last year about this time in June, and this tree is still alive and it's actually trying to heal itself. Well, it never will really successfully heal itself, but the theory is that it's not the way aspen grows. It grows as a clone and just shoots up suckers everywhere. This tree still thinks it's alive, so it's not trying to send up suckers everywhere else. This is the theory. We'll see if it works.
What is the reason for doing this?
Well, you're reducing the competition. Like before, when this was standing up, this tree here, even though it's almost tall enough, couldn't be called a free-growing tree because it has competition. So I came in and cut that one down and that one down, and now you can say there's a free growing pine tree.
Then that fulfills his silviculture obligations to have the stand of conifers free growing.
I've never done this where you flip them back. Well, we had to be really aggressive about managing it. I mean, our approach was to go in there. At the beginning, we thought maybe we can control this thing. We started aggressively going out there. Stephanie and the kids can tell you we're out there with the spray cans, you know, marching all over the place and flying over and spray painting individual trees. And so the first year we were building, you know, 2 kilometers of road to get to a patch of 1 hectare and, you know, 50 trees here and 50 trees there, skid trails all over the place. So we did that, and then the next year it blew up some more, went back in, built some more roads, spray painted a whole bunch more trees, hung up a whole bunch of more ribbon, and then finally it just kind of blew up and we wound up throwing a ribbon around all the pine and logging it all, because we were unsuccessful in controlling them. And that's I mean, we basically just got a big wall of beetles coming towards us from everywhere, and we just couldn't keep on top of it. So this here area, we basically logged the pine that was in it out and left behind the fir, and it's actually done a real nice job and made room for the fir that's left to grow up and fill up the space. And then we came in and planted. I planted pretty much 100% fir on this side, a little bit of spruce mixed in, but you can tell it's a lot happier over here, growing in a more semi-shaded kind of a environment.
That's a good job on what you've done so far, and I'm glad you're sticking around for the future and you're staying with it, you know, and not giving up. I think he's a inspiration, a good positive role model for other woodlot licensees. The other thing I like about Paul is he's been very active helping other licensees as well. He's been active in our Woodlot Association, served as vice president for several years now, and he's always there to give a hand at meetings and encourage other people to work with the program. And he's served on the Woodlot Product Development Council as a term there for 6 years, so he's not just out for himself, he's out to spread the good word about the program. And
we did have quite a bit of fir still on the woodlot, so it didn't feel like a complete devastation. And there was planting going on every year, so it felt like, although a somewhat accelerated plan, it was still a plan that was part of the woodlot to begin with.
Okay. All right. Wandering around out there looking at all the plantations, that's a big part of my job right now. Is, you know, we've long since reforested everything. It's probably been, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years even since I planted the last patch that we logged out there. So now it's getting them to the free to grow state. And that's what all that aspen snapping business is about, trying to relieve the competition. So that's one side of it. That's growing where we harvested and trying to get that going as fast as we can. Then on the part of the woodlot over on the west side there, where it's mostly fir, it's trying to maximize the value we can get out of that. And there's going to be some conventional logging. It's going to be at a reduced rate. There's going to be some opportunities for some unconventional logging in the smaller fir stands that we looked at. The challenge is to try and figure out how to make that worth doing. And I don't have any real expectations that that's going to be really lucrative, but if you can get enough out of it to make it worth doing, then down the road that stand will be improved and the trees that are left will be worth more. So that's kind of the main focus there, I guess. We're fortunate in a lot of ways because we have, you know, some big companies here that have a pretty strong tie to this community. It's like their center of operations, and they're pretty darn committed to it, and they still have a pretty good wood supply, and that's a good thing. But we're going to have to get a lot more diversified into probably a lot more smaller guys trying to make different stuff out of wood. It's going to take, it's like the farm we drove by. You're going to have to do a little bit of a lot of things and make a little bit of money out of a lot of things instead of making a whole bunch of money out of one thing. And that's something we're not used to around here. And I'm not claiming to have any answers in that department, but that's what I see that we're going to have to face. We like this community. You know, when we first came here, Steph and I had moved a few different places and lived a few different places, and we kept saying, you know, geez, maybe over the next rainbow. Well, 20 years ago, we said, well, maybe this is it. And we said, you know, geez, if a guy's going to be in the forestry business, Quesnel, you can't find a better place. It's darned easy to grow a tree around here, and it's pretty simple. You know, it's hard to do anything too terribly bad to the land around here because it's pretty forgiving. So this is what you should do, and it's a nice community, so we were pretty committed to it, really. So we're going to have to make something out of it. So.
How are they coming?
They're coming along. There you go. Look at them. We got the barbecue sauce models and the non-barbecue sauce models.
You're going the wrong way, all right?
Oh, you're going
Every which way.
moved me to here, so it should be okay.
I can stay here.
Okay. There you go.
We'll be labeled as cameras. I've done a kilometer jump of a second.
Okay, that's a little extreme, all right.
No, but I was just thinking with the Garmin, because otherwise you have to walk in a straight line through all the Devil's Club, over these cliffs. Nearly killed myself today, but if I had a GPS, I could just walk
Character
around.
building, my boy.
Broken neck is character building.
We're not supposed to break your neck.
Although Paul and Stephanie lost what they had envisioned, this has by no means stopped their perseverance in pursuing alternatives to the present outcome. Currently, Paul is the president of the Quesnel Woodlot Association and maintains his strong belief in the Woodlot program. His dedication to many volunteer duties and his gift of insight has helped them to come to a better understanding of what needs to be done to help the community in the forestry capital of Canada become proactive and productive once again.